Hello, and welcome to Marriage Moments with Life Coach Robin May. Each month, I am so excited to be right here in my home office, sharing with you strategies and tips to help encourage, equip, and empower you in your relationship. This month, we are going to talk briefly about protecting our marriages. If we don't have a plan or a strategy to protect our marriages, we end up being moved by just life stuff. I am a church girl. I grew up in the church. I still am a church girl. But sometimes I need to just know what is the takeaway from a message. What is a sermon takeaway that I can apply to my life right now? I believe all four of these strategies, if you apply them to your marriage right now, you will see great fruit from it. So, are you ready for strategy number one? Number one, if you want to protect your marriage, I want to encourage you to connect with a community. You know, back in the day, we often say how marriages seem to last longer. Now we have marriages that are over in, 72 hours? And so one of the reasons marriages were more sustainable back in the day was because the couple was surrounded by a community. Nowadays, we barely even know who our neighbors are. And we go to church Sunday after Sunday, but how many times do we stop and really connect with the people we worship with? You want to connect with a community of people who are like-minded. Now, when we say like-minded, it doesn't mean that they have to have the exact same thoughts that you have, but their values need to be congruent with yours. And so when you connect with that community, there is an accountability that is automatically created that can help support you and your spouse in those moments that get shaky. And we all have those moments. And so the community can help with that. The community, however, needs to be a place or a group of people where you and your spouse feel loved, welcomed, and supported. It doesn't need to be a community where people think that they are better than another couple or they aren't willing to kind of share some of their struggles. It needs to be a mutually beneficial community. But finding and connecting to a community is a great way for you to protect your marriage. Strategy number two to protect our marriages is creating a no tolerance rule when it comes to someone disrespecting your spouse. Now, I know that might sound obvious, but I'm not talking about the blatant disrespect. More times than not, people are not going to just blatantly disrespect your spouse unless you are. But I'm talking about that subtle disrespect, making derogatory comments or negating something positive your spouse might do, or you might share something with a relative or a close friend and they say something negative about your spouse. You don't want to tolerate that. You want to create an environment where people know when it comes to your spouse, you don't play that. My favorite saying is, I don't play when it comes to Lee May. And most people know when it comes to my husband, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do anything that's disrespectful towards him. Now, that doesn't mean that if somebody has a concern about your marriage that you are in relationship with, maybe a counselor or a trusted advisor, that they aren't able to point that thing out. But it does need to come from a place of respect, loyalty, and love to both you and your spouse. And so creating a no disrespect rule will surely help to protect your marriage. Strategy number three. Now, some of you are going to say, Robin, you shouldn't even have to say this, but trust me, I do. If you want to protect your marriage, I don't want the two of you to forget to romance one another. Remember the things that you did to get her? Remember the things you did to keep him? I want you to continue to do those things. You know, life happens. Life gets busy. And the next thing you know, you're running to meeting, and you are dealing with the kids, and you're dealing with your parent who might be ill. You just have a lot going on. Trust me, I know. But you don't want to forget to do the small, everyday things to romance your spouse. Whether it's something as simple as sending them a text message after they leave for the day saying, honey, "You looked amazing today when you left." Or maybe you can shoot them an email or write them a special note. Maybe you can contact their assistant and see if you can get on their schedule for lunch as a surprise. I want you to intentionally romance your spouse. And it doesn't have to be anything expensive or anything elaborate. You just want to do the things that invest and that deposits into the love bank of making your partner know that you are still attracted and that you are still drawn to them. And so if you want to protect your marriage, I want you to intentionally romance your spouse. Strategy number 4 to protecting our marriage. This is almost similar to our previous strategy, but this needed to be a point all by itself. Number 4, I want you and your spouse to commit to running away together. I just don't know how to emphasize this more, but I just want you to understand how critically important it is for you and your spouse to get away from the children, yes, those sweet little dumplings, to get away from work, even to get away from church life, to get away from the demands on your life, and just get together one-on-one and just remember why we got married in the first place, to just reconnect with one another. It's something about getting away from our life, running away for a little bit, that rejuvenates us and refreshes us. Think about when you take a vacation and how a lot of times we say it takes a few days just to unwind so that I can unwind. Well, that's the same thing with your marriage. Your marriage deserves a time where just the two of you reconnect with one another outside of everybody else. You know, one of the dangers of staying married for a very long time, particularly when you have children, is that your marriage becomes so focused and so consumed on the children that when they leave the home, because they should leave the home and have a life of their own, you and your spouse have forgotten what brought you together in the first place. Now, I get it. A lot of times finances keeps us from being able to do that often, but can you commit to that once a year? It doesn't even have to be that you go to the Bahamas or to Bora Bora. You can go to Florida, and if you have to, do a staycation. Get out the house, get you a Groupon coupon, and get a nice hotel room somewhere, but you and your spouse need to run away. And now tip number 5. In all seriousness, I think this might be the most important one. And those of us who are believers, I think this is often one that we forget about. Strategy number 5 to protecting your marriage is that I want you to get serious about your spiritual warfare when it comes to your marriage. See, we forget the enemy isn't playing any games with us. I know that we want to focus on the power of Jesus Christ, and we should, but we don't want to forget that there is an enemy that doesn't believe in marriage and is out to destroy our marriages. But if we get serious about our spiritual warfare when it comes to our marriage, then we will have the victory. Take time to ask your partner what it is that he or she needs you to cover them with. What is it that they are concerned about? What is it that is weighing on their hearts? And take that to the Lord on behalf of your spouse. The two of you come together and pray about those subtle things that you know are starting to disconnect you. Pray about those things that are in your bloodline. Create a prayer strategy. And let me tell you, even if your partner isn't committed to this particular principle, you can still do it. You can still fight for your marriage through spiritual warfare and watch what happens. So there you have it. Those are 5, I hope, very practical strategies. If you don't look at any of the other videos on the IBelieveInMarriage.com website, although I hope you do, I believe if you take these 5 strategies and you fully live them out, if you make sure that you are connected to a marriage community, if you make sure that you have a no disrespect policy when it comes to your spouse, if you make sure that you're romancing your spouse, that you and your spouse consistently run away together, and that you have a serious prayer strategy when it comes to your marriage, I believe those things can help protect your marriage and create a great foundation for the two of you to continue to build upon. So I always end these videos with discussion questions, and so here is the first question. I want the two of you to sit down and think about one more strategy. What is one more tip that you and your spouse can do to protect your marriage? Customize it. Maybe it's something that I've missed that you know you and your spouse need to do. I want the two of you to sit down and identify what is one more thing that we can do to protect our marriage. Number two, I want the two of you to look at the 5 things that I shared. And like I always tell you, identify the one that leaps out to you the most. And I want the two of you to talk about some practical ways you can make that a reality. So for example, if you're thinking about, we really do need a marriage community, we'll talk about how you can do that. Maybe you and your spouse can start to invite couples over for dinner once a month, or maybe you can get engaged in your church's marriage ministry. But take time to identify some practical ways that you can do at least one of the 5 strategies that we shared. Okay, so those are your 2 discussion questions. As always, if this blessed you, will you please share it with your family and friends? We want to make IBelieveInMarriage.com a movement. Remember, marriage works if you work it. God bless.